working on that premise, if that was correct, do you think that would change your viewpoint a little bit if you got your empirical evidence?
The empirical evidence of what? Of that?
Well, you just say, yeah, Hamas is in the hospitals.
Hamas is in the hospital?
Yeah, and stuff like that. Would your opinion on what Israel's doing and how they're handling these situations, would it change at all?
If it were true, which I don't think it is, because what the UN has shown is not in congruence to what you've told me. But honestly, I don't know. If it came to I think it's
First of all, what's your name?
Isa. Nice to meet you.
Isa?
Yeah, Isa. Like Isabella, but like Isa.
Love that. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
Moshe.
Nice
so
to
nice
meet
to meet
you.
you. Thank you for sitting in the hot seat today.
Yeah.
We're gonna ask some questions. All right, first question. Dive right into it. What were the 2 largest terrorist attacks in the world in the past 25 years?
The 13th didn't be about 4 people.
9/11. In the last 25 years, 9/11.
9/11. That's one of them.
But I mean, I don't care.
And Manchester, I think, or like Paris, like the Manchester terrorist attacks. I got the Ariana Grande concert, and then Paris too, I think.
Not
No?
those. Nope.
Then
I'll give you one more guess.
is it October? I'm assuming October 7th.
October 7th.
7th? Okay.
Yeah. You know what happened on October 7th?
Yes, I do know what happened on
Okay.
October 7th.
Yeah, so just kind of, I guess, for the viewer or for yourself, I don't know if you know the exact details, but on October 7th, 1,200 people were killed. Over 250 were taken hostage. And to kind of put that in relative to America, because Israel's such a small population, that would be the equivalent of 40,000 Americans being killed in one day.
Okay.
Just to put things kind of in perspective, and those were the 2 largest terrorist attacks in the past 25 years. All right, moving on to question number 2. One, and this is not going to be part of your question, but it's going to help you out a little bit. Do you know how many Muslim countries there are in the world? Majority Muslim.
Majority Muslim.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like the countries in the Middle East and like maybe a couple of them in North Africa. There's like maybe like 10, 12, 15 maybe?
Really close.
Really
close. 57.
Oh, well, there we go. I didn't think there were that many. Well,
57 Muslim majority countries in the world.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that. Do you know how many Jewish countries there are in the world?
well, one. Israel.
1. Absolutely correct. Okay. Now for your second question. Out of those 57 countries, how many majority Muslim countries does Israel have a signed peace treaty with?
Honestly, I don't know.
You want to...
Like ballpark?
So you can use it to like do, what,
93?
Okay.
Maybe.
Pretty close. Pretty close.
Uh-huh.
6.
6? Okay.
Israel's actually been putting a lot of effort to make peace with these majority Muslim countries lately. You know, the Abraham Accords is part of that. The countries are, do you want to try to guess which 6 or?
Honestly, no. Probably
No?
no. I don't
Fair.
want to. No.
So just so you know, general knowledge, Egypt, Jordan, Sudan, Morocco, Bahrain,
Bahrain?
exactly. And where am I at?
UAE.
Yeah, let's back on.
I had no idea Sudan was a majority Muslim.
Majority Muslim
So
country.
there
A
we
lot
go.
of people
The
don't
more
know
you
that.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
The more you know.
In the Middle East and Africa. Okay, third question. I mean, we'll just shoot for the education at this point. I know we lost $100, but we gained some knowledge, so that's good. Shoot for the third one. In the past 20 years, how much money has Qatar invested in American universalists, higher education?
Yeah, unless someone has
Well,
Did you even know that Qatar invested any money?
Well, I mean, I knew that Qatar gave, President Trump like Trump, he gave it like $1 billion like jet.
Yeah.
So
4
I knew,
million, I think.
yeah. But I didn't. I mean, I assumed like there was some investment in universities, but I don't know how many. I don't know
Okay.
how much.
Past 20 years, Qatar's invested $6.25 billion
Wow.
in American universities. And
Yeah.
like a lot of people don't know this, but obviously Qatar has its own motives,
Yeah.
and they give these massive donations to universities, end up controlling certain curriculums, control which staff teaches at which university, what exactly they're teaching. The past 20 years, that's really contributed to kind of the mindset of a lot of American students, because this is what they're learning at school. And a lot of people don't know that it's not even coming from an American perspective or mindset, but it's actually what Qatar wants students to think. That's really played a huge role the education system in this country.
Is there like a specific school that they've given to, or like it, like, do you know like if there's like a specific type of school, like where is it kind of
So
like?
one example, there's a bunch of them, but one example is Texas A&M.
Yeah.
They gave, I believe, the largest donation in history to Texas A&M, and one of the stipulations of that donation was that they control who was teaching in Middle Eastern studies, and they put in their own professors, and those professors also get to decide who they hire, you know, and it kind of caused this massive avalanche effect of what is being taught and who is teaching at a school like Texas. So it's kind of like a great example of how they've and about Middle Eastern studies. Obviously, Qatar has a lot of interest in. So it's just kind of like this crazy ball rolling effect, and a lot of people don't know that. But yeah, those were the 3 questions. You didn't get them right, but maybe next time you will. You know, now you have this
maybe
info.
I will. No, honestly, like I had no idea. Like, do you know in what sense like they're trying, like what type of narrative they're trying to push, like the Qataris?
I think they have a bunch of different narratives they're trying to push. One that's very just relevant is the takes on Israel and Palestine. Qatar, for example, the Hamas leaders live in Qatar, and they sit on billions and billions of dollars, and they essentially fund a lot of the terrorists in Gaza, and they funded October 7th, for example. So for the pro-Palestinian narrative has been heavily funded by Qatar. That's one narrative they're trying to push. And general anti-West indoctrination. There's been like a huge polarization of a lot of things in the past 20 years. And the best way to kind of conquer is divide and conquer. And a big part of their funding has gone to creating polarization and tension between the different sides. And there have been a lot of different movements that you could see in the past 10 years that happened that create a lot of, different tensions. And that is not for the betterment of American society or American civilization, but for the betterment of what Qatar wants.
So, is it kind of so like in your sense you don't think like the pro-Palestinian movement has like any merit like whatsoever, or?
Well, no. First of all, maybe I label the movement wrong because I would say I'm pro-Palestinian, right? I'm Israeli.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like what does the pro-Palestinian movement actually want and what their goals are? I think there's merit to wanting the freedom of Palestinian people, right, and the best for Palestinian
No, absolutely.
people. Yeah, I do agree with that. I will say what the pro-Palestinian movement has done in America does not benefit the Palestinian people.
No, I'm to be complete. I'm pro-Palestinian. I am in total like opposition of like what has been occurring between Israel and Palestine, like the genocide that's occurring in Palestine, like the lack of aid, the lack of, and I do understand.
Not a genocide, by the way.
I mean, when you put in perspective with the like United Nations, like there are reputable reputable organizations like the UN, UNICEF, like so many there are like scholars that have studied like genocide that have deemed what is happening in Palestine a genocide. And I do understand. And I do understand. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I cut you off. That was fine.
And I do understand that and I do understand the notion of there's a lot of like Middle Eastern like influence like in the universities, but I could also say there's a lot of, like on the flip side of it, I could also say there's a lot of like Israeli influence in universities. Like when I talk about AIPAC, like people like donating to institutions, donating to politicians wanting to push, a more Israeli positive narrative. Like, so I think it can happen on both sides, but I think to flat out say that what's happening in Palestine isn't a genocide, with what we've seen with like live footage, organizations, like I said, UN, like scholars deeming this stuff a genocide, like the amount of stuff that I've seen on social media and whatnot, I don't think it's fair to say that it isn't a genocide.
Okay, so we don't need to be a scholar to kind of break this one down. Let's just look at the numbers real quick, right? 67,000 Palestinians have they killed in this war, right? Out of a population of 2 million, in Gaza, that is.
Yeah.
Right? Now, 25,000 of those are Hamas terrorists, right? And these are not Israeli numbers, by the way, okay? Now, that puts the ratio at about somewhere between 1 to 1 to 2 to 1, okay? And those are the best ratios in any war in modern warfare history. Okay, it would be best ratios. Israel sends leaflets before they bomb. Hamas warning Palestinians to evacuate. Hamas, the governing body of Gaza, embeds themselves into civilian population, right? Making it impossible, nearly impossible, or the job extremely, extremely hard for Israel to target solely Hamas members. And Israel goes to, frankly, further measures than any army has ever done in modern warfare history in order not to target civilians. The unfortunate reality of war is that there are civilian casualties, and that's horrible. But Israel also has had two main goals since the beginning of this war, which is one, get our hostages back, and two, eradicate Hamas. Right? Israel can't just sit there and let Hamas populate, gain power, and continue attacking.
No.
So then that's what we saw on October 7th.
Yeah.
So Israel needs to get rid of Hamas. And how is Israel expected to do that when Hamas doesn't care about their own people, right? The governing body and this terrorist organization doesn't care about their own civilians, right? So how is Israel supposed to do that? And frankly, the job that Israel has done in the past 2 years in doing that is really incredible if you think about it. And it's heartbreaking to see the loss of Palestinian life. And I don't wish, as an Israeli, I live in Israel, right? I don't wish for a single innocent Palestinian to die. But there is a reality to things. And I'd say on the last point on that is Israel, if Israel's intention was to commit a genocide of the Palestinian people, this would have been done October 8th. This has gone on for so long because it is such a tough thing to do to eradicate Hamas and pinpoint Hamas members without civilian casualties.
Yeah, but when I see reports from reputable sources, from news outlets saying that Israel has bombed hospitals, they bombed camps, they've bombed like places, like my mind's blanking, so I'm not like my memory is not, but from the general essence of like what I've seen from reputable sources, like not just like random accounts on TikTok I just like close whatever, is like, yes, like I understand that, you gotta, you have to a certain degree retaliate, but at what cost? Because it's getting to a point where it's like, it seems like it's excessive.
When you said, you mentioned that Israel's bombing hospitals, and you see things, from reputable sources, bombing hospitals or,
but bombing like
schools,
camps, bombing like places. Like I remember I saw a report that they had bombed like this like refugee camp where like, you're obviously not supposed to bomb refugee camps. And so like, and on top of that, like, like once again, like organizations who have, spent like its entire existence kind of like focusing on like international relations and whatnot, like they've deemed what Israel is doing like a war crime. They deemed it as reprehensible. So like, while I understand, like, and there's like, and of course there's going to be conflicting of information, conflicting opinions from other sources, but I just think like the overwhelming empirical evidence points to the notion that what is happening is genocide, what is happening is a war crime, what is happening is indefensible. And I do understand the want for a Jewish state, the want to have a home. I totally understand that. A peace as well. But I don't think it should be done at the cost of another people. I don't think it should be done at the cost of another nation.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
And that's what I see.
I do think it should be done at the cost of Hamas. I will just to touch on here, because there's going to be a lot of breakdown. I do want to address what you said about the hospitals, the schools, refugee camps. So again, going back to Hamas, right? They don't have the interest of the Palestinian people in their minds. That's not what they want. There's empirical evidence for that. For example, they use all the funding that they get to fund rockets and weaponry. They literally took their own water piping system in Gaza, Turkey pipes, and turned them into rockets, cutting off a lot of the water supply to Gaza.
Doesn't Israel control the water supply?
They had their own, when we gave back Gaza, right? They had their own water system in Gaza, okay, in 2005. They took apart those pipes of the system. This is just facts, it's not an opinion. Took apart those pipes of the system, right? To build rockets, okay? To launch at Israel. Because overall, Hamas, in their own charter, they say this. Their main missions is to eradicate Israel eradicate the Jewish people, and by the way, eventually come here and control and conquer the West, which includes America. And it's funny because like a lot of people say globalize the Intifada, don't truly know what that means. That essentially means bringing Hamas to your doorstep. Now, speaking of the hospitals and why I even brought up that Hamas doesn't have the interest of the Palestinian people, is Hamas, knowing that people are going to see a headline like Israel bombed a hospital, and knowing that that plays into their favor and gains, support of people like yourself potentially, they use hospitals to store their armor. They have bunkers under hospitals, under schools, under refugee. They store a lot of the armor in refugee camps. Okay, Israel's put in a horrible situation, right? You have terrorists here that are threatening our country and our people that are going to end up killing our civilians with this. What do? So Israel has taken all the measures it can, and it's incredible that the ratio from civilians to combat ratio is so low. It is incredible because it's such a condensed area that Israel is taking all the measures that it can to only target the Hamas. But there is an unfortunate reality that Hamas, every time a Palestinian dies, a Palestinian civilian, that is a number statistic for Hamas to boast and garner support of people like yourself.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a really tough situation to navigate.
No, of course. Has there been like what's the word?
What happened was I
God.
saw.
I'm losing the word. Has there been like any like what's the evidence for like the Hamas being in the hospitals? Because I've heard that I've heard those facts, but I've heard that information before. But I've also seen conflicting reports as well, saying that that's not really that the Israeli government hasn't shown any evidence of that. I've known that they've shown like some 3D model.
Oh, there's so much documentation of this. So much documentation.
Such as what?
Videos, I think news sources have come. Yeah, this isn't.
UN's reported that.
Yeah, this isn't.
Hospitals, Hamas have terror bases. It's a strategic move from Hamas's end because they know Israel bombs, and also weaponry. They store their weapons in hospitals. That's another thing. And think about it. Every time a Hamas terrorist soldier on their end gets injured in a gunfight in Israel, where do they go to get treated? The hospitals. So those hospitals are full of Hamas terrorists regardless. And unfortunately, as the governing body of Gaza, they're so intertwined that it's such a complex and hard war to be fighting on Israel's end, with the two main goals of destroying Hamas, a terrorist organization, with the ideology of eradicating all Jews, and two, to bring back the hospitals.
Yeah. It's not really disputed that Hamas has done that. We can go on
of course, because I've just heard other reports from I've heard conflicting information from other sources, not I'm well aware that I can't cite exactly where I've seen it. I can't, and but
It's a much larger topic.
it's just from what from my perspective, what I've seen is a lot of what Israel has put out against and they do it under the guise of saying that they want to eradicate Hamas. My perspective, what I see is that Israel uses this idea of we need to eradicate Hamas, we need to do this, we need to do that, as a justification, as an excuse for the violence that they have put upon the Palestinian people. Because like you said, the Hamas I'm not well versed in what Hamas has done for the Palestinian people. I'm not an expert. I don't know. But
to come to, sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
don't you think to come to an educated, opinion and a stance, you did open this up with the pro-Palestinian movement
absolutely.
and Israel's committing genocide. Don't you think these are important things to know?
yeah.
As far as, Hamas is literally the governing body of Gaza. Very important player in this.
Yeah, and Israel also controls the water, the food supply, the aid supply. That every single time flotillas have come in to try to give aid to Gaza, to Palestine, they've been stopped.
Right. Okay.
Multiple times.
So the recent flotillas. I don't know if you're talking about the Greta Thunberg, expedition to Sudan. Those are 100% a PR stunt. And the last one.
The PR stunt?
Yeah.
I don't think it was a.
100%.
It was live streamed.
So the last flotilla when it was taken over had a handful of boxes of aid. Okay, it was never intended to get to the Palestinian people. That wasn't the point. The whole campaign was for them to raise awareness for the cause, which I think they did actually. But no, it wasn't about giving aid. And if you want to talk about aid, something you should know about this, which is really, really important, is 80% of the aid that's been brought into Gaza, right? Which is thousands and thousands and thousands of trucks since October 7th. 80% since this war started has been hijacked by Hamas. Has been hijacked. This is UN numbers. This is UN numbers.
That's not.
UN numbers. 80% has been hijacked by Hamas. UN numbers. Please, I really encourage you after this to check this up. Hijacked by Hamas, and then what do? They sell it back to the Palestinian people, okay, at 3 to 5 times the rate of what that food costs to fund their own. The people that, by the way, we're saying are starving. They shouldn't be starving. There's been enough aid going into Gaza, enough aid to free Palestine 3 times over. Okay, to feed Palestine 3 times over. Hamas has hijacked the majority of that aid, which is why then Israel, right, to fund its own terrorism, which is why then Israel is put into a position, and like there's a lot of stuff that you're not going to hear. I'm sure our algorithms are very, very different. Unfortunately, it's not the mainstream narrative that's being pushed, but it's really important stuff that you should know, and I really encourage you, by the way, you can just
I will definitely
go onto the UN website and check this out,
course.
because like a lot of people don't know this, and I'm sure it pops up, as a Jew from Israel, it pops up in my algorithm a lot more than it pops up in yours. I'm sure you have stuff in your algorithm that pops up a lot more. I'm actually like an advocate for this whole conflict, so frankly I see a lot of both sides, but yeah, they fund their own terrorism, and then Israel's put in the position of, okay, so you let in aid, and you're essentially letting in funding for Hamas, right? So it's again Hamas manipulating, with the Palestinian people as the ones that are going to suffer from this, manipulating the cause for their own Hamas benefit, not for the benefit of Palestine, and for making Israel look like the bad guy. And we're put in so many of these impossible situations throughout this entire conflict and before that, like, how do you practically deal with that? Like, for example, the hospital thing, how do you deal if there are a bunch of terrorists hiding their armor in a hospital?
Special forces.
It's not as easy as special forces. And by the way, Israel has lost so many soldiers since the beginning of this war, some of them being my close friends, by the way, that have gone into Gaza in order to minimize Palestinian casualties, in order to eradicate Hamas, but you're also putting your own people at risk. And when you have a headquarters of Hamas in a hospital, it is not as simple as saying, we'll just send in special forces and get the job done. Innocent people die on both sides, even when special forces are involved, because they're so embedded with one another.
Yeah, but special forces reduces the amount of casualties. Like if you put in a special force...
We send in special forces all the time. You just can't only fight a war with special. That's not how wars.
Well, I'm not saying that like
I mean, we still have to accomplish our goal.
I'm not saying that you can only fight a war with special forces, but the amount of just absolute force used by Israel is not justified. And like I understand that you're saying like, oh, Hamas is in the hospitals, like they're taking over the aid. I have not seen a UN, any sort of proclamation, charter showing that information, like reinforcing that information. Okay. And like,
for sure. Let's look it up afterwards. We'd love to. Also, before we do look it up, working on that premise, if that was correct, do you think that would change your viewpoint a little bit if you got your empirical evidence?
The empirical evidence of what? Of that?
Well, you just say, yeah, Hamas is in the hospitals.
Hamas is in the hospital?
Yeah, and stuff like that. And that they're using the Palestinian people, proof that they're using the Palestinian people as their own political piece in order to garner, hate against Israel. Would your opinion change at all?
I'm not pro-Hamas. I'm pro the Palestinian people. So
would your opinion on what Israel's doing and how they're handling these situations, would it change at all?
If it were true, which I don't think it is, because what the UN has shown is not in congruence to what you've told me. But honestly, I don't know. If it came to I think it's really nuanced, and like because like it's not just October 7th, it's also decades and decades and decades of conflict between Palestine and Israel.
Right, but when you say it's really nuanced, meaning like you came out with, like, you had the general statements of Israel, committing a genocide, and Israel, is trying to eradicate the Palestinian people, and these kind of general statements. But then when we dove into the nuance, you said it wouldn't.
Well,
so the nuances wouldn't change your opinion.
Like, because my stance is coming from what I've gathered from, because of organizations that have put forward that they agree that this is a genocide. Like I said, UN, genocide scholars who have studied the Jewish Holocaust have deemed what is happening in Palestine like a genocide. That's why I think it's a genocide. If there was no evidence of that, then no, I would not be calling it a genocide. But it's just the fact that there is empirical evidence showing, not only empirical evidence, but just credible people, credible organizations, credible scholars naming this a genocide. I think like that's why I hold my opinion.
Right, to me, but like circling back to like, do you need to be a scholar to look at a 67,000 death ratio, 1-to-1, between a 1-to-1 and a 1-to-2 civilian to combatant ratio to determine that it's not a genocide?
I don't think you need to be a scholar, but the fact that scholars have, like, and those ratios, I don't know if those ratios, like, are those ratios like verified by various like kind of like the UN, like UNICEF? What was it? 67,000?
67,000 Palestinians and around 25 total, and around 25,000 of those being Hamas terrorists.
Like, you're absolutely sure.
Possible.
Like, if I were to look up UN, like some sort of,
Look up those numbers.
if I would look up right now.
Yeah.
What they
Just how is that a genocide? And like, again, if Israel had the intention of a genocide, like Israel does have the military capability of pressing a button and genociding the Palestinian people.
Well, at the
easily.
same time, you have to think about, they're not just gonna do it because they're not just gonna do it out of like in the open air. They're not gonna do it just like they're gonna.
yeah, they managed to do it amazingly impressive.
I'm really bad at forming thoughts, if you can't tell. But
I just think in general, like obviously I think we disagree on a lot of stuff, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of our kind of premises
and like and on top of that, like the information that like we've seen, what you've
Exactly.
seen is very conflicting.
exactly.
But
And I think that really goes to highlight like the importance of doing your independent research and knowing that there are movements and influences that sell a certain narrative and ignore certain facts. And I'm sure, by the way, everything I see is more biased to my side, but like I've really kind of done my due diligence and looking into things, watching both sides. Frankly, I watch a lot of Al Jazeera too, right?
no, yeah,
And-
I do too. That's what
Yeah, like-
that's what I've seen a lot of the stuff from.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So like, it's really important to do your own research. And like after this, I would love to look up all those sources that we talked about like the
Yeah.
hospitals and all that.
Yeah.
Really, really important. At the end of the day, though, the whole thing we're doing here, it says confront ideas, not people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's been such a polarization in the West of one person has this opinion, another person has this opinion, and we start judging each other as human beings, and we start canceling out the other ones. You're a fascist, you're a racist, you're an anti-Semite, you're this, you're that, right? To the you're a Zionist, whatever kind of buzzword we throw out there, and we forget to have dialogue. And a lot of times what we don't realize is, and again, I think we can find some common ground on,
No, yeah.
we both want the best for the Palestinian people, right?
Yeah.
We disagree on how to get there.
Yeah.
Right? But the only way we can kind of come to resolutions is by actually talking about it and confronting each other's ideas
No,
and not confronting
absolutely.
the person. Like
Yeah.
we disagree, but like I have no hate.
No,
towards
of
you,
course,
it's all
no,
love.
absolutely not.
So I think this was an incredible conversation.
Yeah, of
I really
course.
appreciate it.
It's great meeting you.
Isa, right?
Yes.
Moshe.
Awesome
And
meeting
thank you
you.
so much for sitting
Yeah,
down today.
thank you for having me.
Hell yeah.